This is Cast of Wonders, the young adult fiction podcast featuring stories of the fantastic. Welcome! Episode 377 for September the 27th, 2019. I'm Catherine Inskip, co-editor of Cast of Wonders and your host for today's episode. September the 22nd to 28th is Banned Books Week, an annual international event celebrating the freedom to read and highlighting the importance of free and open information. This year's theme is Censorship Leaves Us in the Dark, Keep the Light On. Sunshine is the best disinfectant, as the saying goes, and stories are like sunshine for the soul. The words we share with each other give us hope, light, warmth, and strength to resist oppression. This week we're sharing some of that light and strength with you. This Is Not a Ghost Story by V. Medina is the third of our episodes for Banned Books Week 2019 and a Cast of Wonders original. V. Medina is a non-binary, queer, biracial, disabled author currently residing in Tennessee. They are often found writing about dead things, sentient things that should not be sentient, and creatures not of this world. They are also one of those people who can't pick between cats and dogs, drinks both tea and coffee, and is the sort of person who wants to do everything at once, even if they only accomplish a little at a time. They are often fond of calling themselves a cat of many hats. Speaking of cats, they have two of them and adore both of those fuzzy, ridiculous creatures. This story is narrated by Julia Rios. Julia Rios is a queer Latinx writer, editor, podcaster and narrator whose fiction, non-fiction and poetry have appeared in Daily Science Fiction, Lightspeed and Goblin Fruit, among other places. As an editor, Julia has won multiple awards including the Hugo Award and is the guest editor for the Banned Books Week showcase on Cast of Wonders this year. Julia is a co-host of the Skiffy and Fanty Show, a general science fiction and fantasy discussion podcast, and has narrated stories for Escape Pod, Podcastle, Pseudopod, and Cast of Wonders. A quick content warning, this story does include a few one-off curse words, including the F word. And now we've a tale to tell.
This Is Not a Ghost Story by V. Medina. In the darkness of her bedroom, after her mother has gone to bed and she's supposed to have done the same, she tells stories to the ghosts. She would do more for them, but they never ask for anything else, and she doesn't know what more to do. They listen, gentle whispers all around her, urging her to continue, begging her for a few more words, just a little more of her time. They crave the stories she has to offer them, and even when she is young, she feels the pull of narrative against her bones. The ghosts are kind in their need, not pushing or screaming, but quietly pleading, and she was not raised to deny anyone. She is the quiet kid, the good girl, the sweetheart. She knows her role, and it doesn't matter what she wants because everyone already knows who she is before she ever gets the chance to show them. People look at her, see the way she moves, the white cane in her hand, the way she holds books so close to her face. They all think they know her story even before she says a word. So at night, she takes advantage of being able to be the storyteller for once, rather than having the story put upon her. The ghosts gather around her bedside, and she tells them every tale she knows, and many she makes up in the heat of the moment. They don't care if she's a good weaver of words or not. All that matters is that someone acknowledges them. They are so desperate to be seen, to be recognized as anything other than empty air or as a passing mention. She understands. People don't see her either. They see their idea of who she should be, not the reality of who she is. At school, they teach her how to be the right kind of person, how to be a proper girl who is polite and doesn't cause trouble. She sits in class and makes every effort to be agreeable, to ask for help but never demand it, and to always, always smile. She does it all the time, no matter what. She can't see well enough to be sure when people aren't watching, can only guess when a face is looking in her general direction. The ghosts find her when she gets home. She can feel their heavy presence before she even enters her room. They've been waiting for her, and she's comforted by it. They want the stories she tells, not the story she's supposed to be. She turns music on, pushes the volume all the way up, and counts to 50. It's not a ritual, but it's a pattern, a beat in the story of her family. Her mother comes, knocking on the door and not quite snapping at her to lower the music. "You don't need to go deaf as well as blind," her mother says. She ignores her and starts to tell the ghosts the first story of the day. As she moves unnoticed through high school, she begins to think about being one of the many dead, seeking out tales in the darkness, and about stories themselves, and endings, and afterlives, and epilogues. She starts reading books on writing, about structure and word choice, and how to tell a story that compels and stirs things within people. She doesn't know who the ghosts were in life, just that in death they have found her, claimed her as the person they can go to, and she is touched by that. She thinks about what kinds of stories she would be drawn to if she were a ghost. Sometimes she thinks she should maybe talk to someone about all of this. Go to a therapist, a guidance counselor, or anyone who might be willing to listen to her. Then she remembers that she's already a story in their minds. They have put a narrative on her, and she would have to fight to shatter their stories before they could even listen. And she is so tired. Along with the weight of the stories they put on her, and with learning how to be a person, a daughter, a student, and a storyteller, she can feel exhaustion sinking into her very center. Sometimes she'll lie in bed and dream about how people would read the story she's actually telling, the whole story, not just the fragments they want to see. She never comes to a conclusion on those nights as to whether it's a good tale or not, but then again, she's yet to reach the ending. When she very abruptly loses more sight, so much that she has to exclusively read in digital and audio, she finds herself thinking about plot and character development and how, in her opinion, all of it is utter bullshit. She gets angry, furious at everything, and stops trying to be what people expect. For a long time, she tried, she did, but what has living other people's versions of her story ever gotten her? She doesn't abandon the ghosts, though. They didn't ask for anything but some attention and a story or two to keep them warm at night, and just because she's angry, it doesn't mean she is uncaring. If anything, she finds more comfort in their presence, knowing they are still there despite her anger, still hungry for her words. Rather than pushing them away, she actively embraces them, starts feeling for others outside her home, and when she finds them, she launches into whatever story comes to mind. It doesn't matter if other people are around or if it is inappropriate in some way. She tells her stories, and she tells them with bared teeth. Her mother worries. "Are you all right?" she asks. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Instead of responding, she glares and walks away. If her mother tries to touch her, she dodges. She is done. She is done with all of it. Except for the stories. She's pretty sure she'll never be done with the stories. Because somehow they keep pulling her back, keep luring her into the depths of narrative, no matter how hard she tries to pull away. And if she's honest with herself, she doesn't mind. Having something to be a through line, be it ghosts or stories or some strange combination of the two, it gives her a sense of stability, of reassurance. She will always have a story to tell, and there will always be someone to listen to it. She survives her teenage years, though just barely. She falls in love with pretty girls and boys who likely think she's too fucked up to bother looking at. She tells her love stories to the ghosts, but after a while, even she gets bored of them. She doesn't accept help anymore. She lets the ghosts guide her, for she's found that there are ghosts everywhere, but the living don't get to approach. She bristles if they try, pulling her jacket tighter around her shoulders. Black leather and a glare from mismatched eyes is usually enough to send people backing away. She talks to the ghosts openly, not giving a damn who sees or what they think. They are friends, helpers, and comrades, and fellow soldiers in the private war she is fighting against the world. She doesn't bother trying college, just moves out when she's 20 after saving up enough of her disability income to put down for an apartment, and convincing her mother to co-sign the lease. Her mother still doesn't understand what happened to her little girl. There are new ghosts in her apartment, a studio which she chose because it's easy to maintain. They swarm around her bed, curious and whispering questions. Who is she? Can she really see them? Does she really tell stories like the others say? She smiles, closing her eyes, and starting to talk, offering answers and quiet tales of comfort and promise. She thinks about maybe asking if she could work with them, if she could become a medium or something. But something about the idea makes her annoyed, frustrated that she even considered the thought. She learns how to move against the city, learns the bus routes and the safe streets to cross. She learns about the ghosts on the sidewalks and the ones that haunt the park that she sometimes goes to just to get out of her apartment. The city is filled with the dead, and while not all of them are kind, not all of them are quite as needy once they realize she can actually speak to them. The ghosts are hungry for attention, for a little scrap of acknowledgement, and her stories are just enough to lure them into coming again and again, helping her when they can, and swarming like a pack of dogs around the person they've claimed as their own. At some point, she starts writing down some of the better tales. They're still a mess, and she's not sure she has the right mentality to edit them, but she starts noting down when she thinks she's come up with something interesting. She shows some of them to a friend she's met online, who says they really enjoy them. It makes her cheeks flush and a smile spread across her face. She likes this friend a lot. Likes the way they think and how they treat her like a person instead of a cliché. She's never met them in person, but she is sure the two of them will get along if they ever do. They offer to clean up some of the stories they really like, saying that maybe she could try putting them up somewhere, or maybe even submitting them for publication in a magazine. She shakes her head even though the conversation is happening over text and her friend can't see. Still, the thought pulls at her for days afterward. There is no harm in doing it, she reminds herself as she's preparing dinner. It could be fun. The idea of rejection doesn't scare her, and neither does the idea of someone stealing her words. While plagiarism would be frustrating, the idea of someone finding comfort in the stories, someone living, is enough to make her finally agree. That night, she lies in bed getting a giggle out of telling the ghosts that they're all going to be on the internet. The stories get a framing device because she's always liked such things, and it would feel wrong to leave the ghosts out. In the story around the stories, 2 kids hang out by a river. One has the habit of smoking cigarettes, and the other is usually fiddling with something, a bit of grass, a twig, a pencil. One of those kids is also dead. The 2 of them trade stories back and forth, telling each other secrets and wishes and fears wrapped up in fiction. She posts 2 stories every month, one from the living kid and one from the dead one. It feels right to do it that way, to make sure there is at least a little bit of a ghost story involved. She owes so much to the dead. The stories don't get astoundingly popular or anything, but they bring in a little money here and there, and she gets up enough courage to start doing audio versions with her friend. They have fun enjoying the process of creating together. Eventually, she tells her mother she's been writing, discusses the idea of story and how it's something she's loved for years. Her mother smiles over coffee. "You look happier than I've seen you in a long time. I'm glad you've found something you love." On her way home, she feels her jaw unclench and the tension in her shoulders relax. Somewhere in all this, she realizes something. The stories are different now. The narrative has changed. She has mellowed, though she still has sharp edges. Her mother stops asking where her little girl has gone and starts talking more about what a good adult she has become. She has shifted from seeing herself as small and angry and trapped. She feels comfortable and content with where she is. She's happy. When she looks back on the ups and downs of her life, it almost makes her laugh. She was trying so hard not to be one kind of story, she found herself turning into a different one without stopping to consider if that was what she really wanted. She has been haunted her entire life by ghosts, by expectations, by stories that lived in her own mind, unaware of the idea that she might be able to use all of that to her advantage. She was so busy reacting that she forgot about taking control and being a driving force. Now she tells stories not just to the ghosts at her bedside, but to the world. And it's not a trap, not an outline she is forced to follow, because now she understands how characters drive story.
The protagonist of this story has a disability, but in a practical sense she's learned all she needs to manage, to show she can stand on her own without help, without other people. She's not a victim. She's not helpless. She can manage on her own. She doesn't need other people at all. And yet she is helpless. She's stuck in a world where everyone else is blind. They don't see her. They don't see the walls of their concern closing in around her. They don't see that the path she's choosing is one of their making, and they resent her for all her hard and sometimes self-destructive scrabbling towards some small semblance of freedom. They don't see her, and she pushes them all away because of it. The ghosts are different. The ghosts don't ask much. They listen, they see, they accept. Sometimes growing up, that's all we seem to have. A quiet place inside ourselves where we don't have to mask, don't have to perform, don't have to meet external expectations that have never, ever made sense. We can tell ourselves our own stories, where none but ghosts can hear. and it's still desperately lonely at times. But if that's the only place where we're permitted to be ourselves, we seize that chance. This story resonates so strongly with me. My disability, autism, is different, but I spent many years prickly and managing on my own. Wasn't what I wanted in life, but my isolation and my stories let me be me, and it gave me space to grow, and eventually to start letting other people back in. V. Medina tells us this about their story. I'm honestly very close to this piece. It echoes my experience in so many ways and is a reflection of a lot of who I was as a younger person. I had a hard time looking at this story critically or putting it out into the world in any way. But I am glad I did, and that it found a home with an audio medium. Join us again in a few days' time for our final episode for Banned Books Week. We love bringing you the best audio fiction week after week, but we can't do it without your support. Your donations pay our authors, our narrators, our servers and our staff. Please consider supporting us with a monthly donation through either PayPal or Patreon. You can also review us on Apple Podcasts, request us on Spotify, and consider the stories we publish for award consideration. There are lots of ways you can help. Join the discussion on the EA forum, forum.escapeartists.net, or visit on Twitter at Cast of Wonders. Come say hello. Cast of Wonders is a production of Escape Artists Incorporated and is brought to you during Banned Books Week by guest editor Julia Rios, assistant editors Marguerite Kenner, Alexis Goebel and Catherine Inskip, who is also your host today. Our associate editors are Tonya Bezpalko, Amy Brennan, Alicia Caparasso, Trace Fontil, William Haight Minor, Andrew K. Ho, Sean Proctor, Ray O, Susie Rodriguez, Carissa Sluss, Emma Smales and Chris Tang. Our audio producer is Jeremy Carter, and our community manager is Danny Daly. Our episodes are released under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. That means you can download or listen to the episode on any device you like, but you can't change it or sell it. Our theme music, Appeal to Heavens, is by Alexei Nov and available from Promo DJ or his Facebook page. Thank you for listening.